At 10 o'clock in the morning on May 11th, 1945, 34 American aircraft sit on the flight deck of USS Bunker Hill, fueled, armed, and ready to launch. The flight deck is, in effect, a floating bomb. The first Kamikaze hits at 10:02. Two strikes 30 seconds apart. Black smoke rises until it is visible 50 miles away. When it is over, 396 men are dead. 3 of them are officers from Vice Admiral Mark Mitcher's personal staff. 11 more are his enlisted men. His flag cabin is ash. His uniforms are ash. Everything he brought to sea is ash. That evening, from the deck of a borrowed flagship, Vice Admiral Mark Mitcher, 58 years old, gaunt from 2 months at sea, a long-billed cap pulled low over his eyes, orders an immediate offensive strike on the Japanese home islands. He has just lost his 3rd flagship. He has just lost 14 of his own people, and his response is to drive his carriers north toward Japan, in the dark. The answer to what drove that order begins not with the American fleet, but with the weapon that has been burning it, and the man who designed it. By the autumn of 1944, the Imperial Japanese Navy is finished as a fighting force. The Battle of Leyte Gulf, fought across 4 days in October, leaves Japan without the carriers, battleships, and cruisers it needs to contest the waters around its home islands. What the Navy leaves behind are pilots, planes, and a strategic problem with no conventional solution. The problem is simple. Japan is running out of trained aviators. The men who flew at Pearl Harbor, at Midway, over the Coral Sea, most of them are dead. What remains are boys, drafted from universities and factories, pushed through abbreviated training programs, handed aircraft they barely know how to fly. By late 1944, a Japanese naval aviator might arrive at his unit with fewer than 150 total hours in the air. His American counterpart has 3 times that before he ever sees a combat zone. The arithmetic of conventional attack, worked out on staff tables, makes the situation plain. 300 aircraft sortie against a defended fleet. 60% are lost to combat air patrol before they reach their targets. 1/3 of those who survive are cut down by anti-aircraft fire. To score 12 hits on American ships costs 300 aircraft and leaves nothing behind. The alternative, 60 aircraft sortie. The same attrition applies. But the 12 that get through do not drop their bombs and turn for home. They are the bombs. 12 hits, 60 aircraft. The mathematics of desperation need no further explanation. On October 25th, 1944, the first organized kamikaze strike launches against the American fleet off Leyte Gulf. 55 aircraft attack several escort carriers. USS St. Lo takes a direct hit and sinks within the hour. The first warship in history destroyed by a deliberate suicide aircraft attack. The weapon works. The Japanese know it immediately. Over the months that follow, more than 2,000 aircraft are designated for kamikaze missions. And at the center of this effort, quietly, in a cave bunker carved into a hillside on the island of Kyushu, sits the man who will become its architect. On the last day of 1944, he writes in his diary, "My thoughts ran wild, seeking ways to save the empire. Average people have now realized the gravity of the situation, but only too late." His name is Vice Admiral Matomi Ugaki. Ugaki is 55 years old, tall for a Japanese officer, possessed of a strategic intelligence that had set him apart in an institution that prizes consensus. His diary, from its earliest entries, shows a man who understood the war's trajectory before most of his colleagues were willing to say so aloud. He was among the first senior officers to acknowledge that Guadalcanal was lost. He saw Midway's implications clearly when others preferred not to. His wife died before the war. Yamamoto, his commander, his mentor, the man he served for years aboard the combined fleet flagship, was killed in April 1943 when American P-38 Lightning fighters intercepted his transport over Bougainville. Ugaki was traveling in a separate aircraft on the same mission. He survived. Yamamoto did not. He has been carrying that ever since. His headquarters is a cave, not a hardened command bunker, not a reinforced facility. A cave cut into a hillside to shelter him from the B-29 superfortress raids that now cross Kyushu with increasing frequency. From here, he commands the 5th Air Fleet. From here, he directs the most lethal naval air campaign in the history of the Pacific. He cannot see the ships he is attacking. He cannot see the boys he is sending. He sits underground, reads the reports that come back, notes the weather at the top of each diary entry, and writes small poems about the moon. His diary, he calls it Seaweed of War, is full of contradictions. Poetic one day, cold and strategic the next, and in places increasingly disconnected from what is actually happening outside the cave. He is tormented by something the diary never quite resolves. Every aircraft he sends against the American fleet in these massed waves is one fewer aircraft available for the invasion he knows is coming. He is spending the future to fight the present. He knows it. He keeps spending. He disapproves of the Kamikaze program. He has committed in his diary to joining his pilots in death when the time comes. And yet he leads it, from inception to final hour, without hesitation. He hated the weapon. He built his own death into it from the beginning and kept sending others ahead of him. The machine has a name. Operation Kikusui, Chrysanthemum Water. Beginning April 6, 1945, in the waters around the island of Okinawa, 340 miles from the Japanese home island of Kyushu, the last stepping stone before Japan itself, the 5th Air Fleet launches the first of 10 massed waves against the American fleet. The invasion of Okinawa is Operation Iceberg. If it falls, the Americans have an airfield, a harbor, a staging ground for the final assault on the home islands. Everything the Japanese have left, every remaining aircraft, every willing pilot, is thrown into the waters around it. Admiral Nimitz, watching from Pearl Harbor, develops a phrase for what is happening to his fleet. A ship and a half a day. Not metaphor. Accounting. The first Kikusui wave alone. 695 aircraft, including 355 designated kamikazes. Strikes on April 6th and sinks 3 ships outright. Over the following 6 weeks, 33 more are sunk and 368 damaged. Nearly 5,000 naval personnel are killed. The outermost ring of the fleet's defense is held by the radar picket destroyers, small ships stationed 50 to 80 miles out from the main fleet, positioned to give early warning and absorb the first approach. They absorb it. USS Bush and USS Colquhoun are sunk on April 6th alone. Destroyers return to anchorage with superstructures collapsed, crews depleted by a third, hulls marked by multiple impacts, and are turned around and sent back to the picket line because there is no one else to send. Task Force 58, the Navy's fast carrier task force, had tried to solve this problem at its source. In March 1945, before the Okinawa landings even began, 15 carriers sailed north to strike the Kyushu airfields directly, to destroy the kamikazes on the ground before they could be launched. The pilots flying those strikes find airfields largely empty, planes gone, runways bare. The Japanese had been alerted to their approach. They pulled their aircraft off, dispersed them inland, and sent them in the other direction, against the carriers, using low cloud cover to slip through the combat air patrol. The Americans strike at empty runways. Behind them, Japanese aircraft arrive over the fleet. USS Franklin, which has maneuvered to within 50 miles of the Japanese coast, closer than any American carrier in the entire war, is struck by 2 bombs from a single dive bomber at 7:08 in the morning. The fires reach her armed aircraft. Her weapons begin to detonate. 724 men are killed. Franklin barely survives, towed south and out of the war. The preemptive strike has preempted nothing. By the first week of May, Task Force 58 has been on station for 58 consecutive days. A fleet running on accumulated exhaustion, sustained by the knowledge that stopping means abandoning the ground troops on Okinawa to the sky. Kikusui No. 6 assembles on Kyushu in the early days of May, 345 aircraft, including 86 kamikazes. The wave is coming. Task Force 58 tightens its combat air patrols, extends its picket lines, and waits. The day is May 11th, before the fires return. A name. Kiyoshi Ogawa, a Waseda University graduate, drafted the previous summer, graduated from flight school in February 1945 with fewer than 150 total hours in the air. In the normal sequence of things, he would barely be considered ready for his first solo cross-country. He is assigned to a kamikaze unit because, in his aircraft, skill in landing is not relevant. His escort pilots handle navigation. His job is to follow them until he has the target in sight, and then not turn away. He is somewhere between 20 and 22 years old. He has a white hachimaki around his forehead. He has a carrier in his windscreen. It is day 59. Southern Kyushu is covered in low broken cloud, the overcast ragged at around 1,500 feet. Enough concealment for a diving aircraft until it is barely 30 seconds from impact. On the flight deck of USS Bunker Hill, 34 aircraft sit fueled and armed, engines already turning. The ship smells of aviation fuel and the salt wind coming off the East China Sea. The anti-aircraft crews stand at their stations. The crew has been at this for 59 days. They are good at it. At 10:02, a Zero piloted by Lieutenant Junior Grade Seizo Yasunori emerges from the cloud base. He drops a 550-pound bomb. It penetrates the flight deck, exits through the side of the ship, and detonates in the water. His aircraft follows it onto the deck, carving through parked and fueled planes, and the first fire takes hold. 30 seconds later, Kiyoshi Ogawa arrives. His last radio transmission is 8 words. "Now I'm nosediving into the ship." His 550-pound bomb hits near the island superstructure. His Zero follows. One wing separates and passes through the flag office. The fire from the first strike has already reached the armed aircraft on deck. Now the second fire merges with it. The munitions begin cooking off, a continuous percussion of secondary explosions that sailors will describe for the rest of their lives as unlike anything else they heard during the war. The ready rooms below the flight deck, where pilots had been sitting minutes before the strike, are destroyed. Recovery teams working in the smoke navigate by feel, often not encountering their shipmates until they walk into them. 396 men are dead. Among them, 3 officers and 11 enlisted men from Mitcher's personal staff. Burke, compact, intense, the destroyer man's aggression transplanted into a staff officer's role, is unhurt by inches. Mitcher is alive. His flag cabin is not. At 4:30 in the afternoon, Vice Admiral Mark Mitcher crosses by Breach's buoy to the destroyer USS English, watching Bunker Hill burn behind him. His uniforms, his papers, his possessions, everything he brought to sea. Black smoke is still visible 50 miles away. He transfers again to the carrier Enterprise, which becomes his new flagship. He gave his orders in a near whisper. From a swivel chair he sat in backward on the flag bridge, the long-billed cap pulled forward, a face that showed every day of 60 days at sea. His pilots flew for him the way men fly for someone they would follow anywhere. He did not ask them to do things. He did them. That evening, Commodore Arleigh Burke stands beside him. Both men have been within arm's reach of dying since morning. Burke urges the attack, not from grief, but from calculation. The Kyushu airfields are the problem. They have been the problem since March. The fleet cannot keep absorbing this. The carrier task groups have the range, the speed and the night capability to hit those fields at their source. The man who nearly died that morning is doing the math, and the math says go north. Mitchell gives the order. Task Group 58.1 and Task Group 58.3 will drive north that night. They will hit the Kyushu airfields before dawn. Enterprise leads them north in the dark. She has been functioning as the fleet's night carrier, launching and recovering aircraft in darkness, extending the fleet's operational reach beyond what daylight hours allow. And now she takes the retaliatory strike into Japanese waters under cover of night. Behind her, the task groups fall into formation and the carriers accelerate north, away from Okinawa, toward the island they have been bleeding against for 2 months. Japan in May is warm. The rice paddies surrounding the Kyushu airfields carry fireflies. The airfields themselves, Kanoya, Kagoshima, Kokubu, Oita, and the Kanoya Naval Air Station on the Osumi Peninsula, are the nerve centers of the divine wind. Aircraft are parked in their revetments. Ground crews move between them. The night is quiet. In the pre-dawn hours of May 14th, Enterprise's aircraft arrive. The night attack is deliberate. In March, Task Force 58 struck by day, and the Japanese had time to get their aircraft airborne before the bombs arrived. The planes the Americans flew north to destroy were already inbound behind them, already using cloud cover to find the carriers. The lesson was absorbed. Arrive in the dark, when the planes are grounded and the crews are not at their stations, and bring delayed action bombs that keep detonating through the night so that repair teams cannot work. 2 days of offensive sweeps follow. Fighter sweeps first, then carrier bombers joining in. Planes destroyed on revetments, fuel dumps burning, runway surfaces cratered, taxiways rendered impassable. Kikusui No. 6 had struck on May 11th. The next massed wave, Kikusui No. 7, is scheduled to follow within days. It does not launch on schedule. It does not launch the week after. Kikusui No. 7 does not strike the American fleet until May 24th. 13 days. 13 days in which American destroyers on the radar picket line do not face massed attack from above. 13 days in which the fleet repairs, rearms, and rotates its exhausted crews. 13 days in which the ground forces on Okinawa fight their brutal advance across the island's ridgelines without the sky above them turning on the ships bringing them ammunition. The raid that wiped out the Kamikaze forever did not destroy every Kamikaze. Japan had more planes, more pilots, and more airfields than 2 days of American airstrikes could neutralize. What it destroyed was the rhythm. At the exact moment, the rhythm was threatening to break the fleet. Those 13 days had a price. On May 14th, the same day Enterprise's aircraft hit the Kanoya Naval Air Station, a Kamikaze penetrates the destroyer screen. It hops from cloud to cloud, avoiding the anti-aircraft barrage, closing through the gaps, and puts a bomb through Enterprise's flight deck just forward of the island. Mitchell transfers again, this time to USS Randolph. Randolph had already been struck by a long-range Kamikaze at the anchorage of Ulithi weeks earlier. 3 flagships, every one of them hit. The most senior carrier admiral in the Pacific cannot find a flagship that the weapon he has spent 3 days hunting has not already visited. There is something almost orderly about it. The weapon arriving again and again, refusing to concede the argument, even as the argument is being won against it. From the cave bunker on Kyushu, the picture looks different. If one were to read Ugaki's diary without knowing the American records, his Kikusui waves have sunk every aircraft carrier and battleship in the Pacific many times over. His aircrew return, those who return, with claims of carriers sent to the bottom, battleships ablaze. He records these figures. He forwards them to Imperial General Headquarters. They are reported to Tokyo. They are reported to the Emperor. The Emperor's advisors conclude that the divine wind is winning. No fleet carrier is sunk at Okinawa. No battleship, no cruiser. The ships that go down are escort carriers, destroyers, and smaller vessels. Every one of them mourned. But not the instruments of American sea power the Kamikazes are designed to kill. The American fleet is large enough that damaged ships can be detached for repair without compromising the operational capacity of what remains. By 1945, the United States is building carriers faster than Japan can sink them. Ugaki's diary, April 13, 1945. He writes that the 10 operation has killed President Roosevelt. Franklin Roosevelt died the previous day in Warm Springs, Georgia, of a cerebral hemorrhage 8,000 miles from any theater of war. The man directing the most lethal naval air campaign in history is giving his pilots credit for the natural death of an American president on a Georgia hillside. He understood the war's trajectory with unusual clarity. Among the first to see Guadalcanal was untenable, one of the few who measured Midway's consequences without flinching. What the diary shows, underneath the delusion, is what the system does to such a man inside a structure that cannot process what he is generating. The reports from his pilots are the only reports he has. The reports are wrong. There is no mechanism for correcting them. He writes poetry about the moon, begins each entry with the weather, forwards the figures to Tokyo, and waits for news that does not come. Beneath all of it, the deeper arithmetic. Ugaki knows that the aircraft consumed in each Kikusui wave are aircraft he will need when the Americans come for Kyushu itself. He is gathering planes, hiding them from the B-29 raids, stockpiling them for Operation Ketsugo, the mass suicide defense against the invasion fleet. He plans to hit the landing forces with hundreds of aircraft and suicide motorboats simultaneously, a single overwhelming blow at the moment the Americans are most vulnerable. But every wave he launches against Okinawa draws down that reserve. He is eating the future to fight a present he cannot win. His diary shows he knows it. He cannot stop. August 15, 1945. 3 months after the May raids, the atomic bombs have fallen on Hiroshima and on Nagasaki. On the morning of August 15th, the Emperor of Japan speaks by radio to his people in court Japanese that many of them struggle to pass, announcing the end of the war. Ugaki is at an air base on Kyushu, preparing for Ketsugo, a battle that will now never come. He listens to the broadcast through heavy static. He writes in his diary that he could not hear the words clearly, but I could guess at most of it. It is the last entry. He removes his rank insignia from his dark green uniform. He keeps his binoculars. He takes the ceremonial short sword that Yamamoto gave him. He walks to the flight line where 11 aircraft are ready, each one loaded for a final kamikaze sortie. His subordinates protest. He does not respond. He has been rehearsing this moment in his diary for years. His wife is dead. Yamamoto is dead. The thousands of young men he sent north over the ocean are dead. He believes he owes them this. He climbs into the rear seat of a Yokosuka D-4Y4 dive bomber. Warrant Officer Akiyoshi Endo is the man whose place in the kamikaze roster Ugaki has taken. The radio man whose scheduled mission the Admiral has usurped. Endo protests. Ugaki orders him to stand down. Endo climbs in anyway, forcing himself into the space the Admiral already occupies, refusing to surrender what was his. Ugaki shifts to make room. 3 men in a cockpit built for 2, the engine already running, the summer evening settling over Kyushu. At 1924, Endo transmits the last message. The plane has begun its dive. No American records show a successful kamikaze attack that night. The 11 aircraft likely fell to American fighters or into the sea. The following morning, the crew of a landing craft finds the still smoldering wreckage of an aircraft on the beach of Iheyajima, a small island off the coast of Okinawa. 3 bodies. The third wears a dark green uniform, stripped of rank. A short sword lies in the sand beside him. The American sailors bury them where they find them. The war was over at noon. The last kamikaze struck, or tried to, at 1924. The body found on the beach the next morning was buried without rank, without ceremony, by the men he had spent 6 months trying to kill. At the time of Japan's surrender, more than 9,000 aircraft had been hidden across the home islands, 5,000 of them specially modified for suicide attack, reserved for the invasion that never came. The kamikazes had not won, they had not lost, they had simply run out of war.